Hi, this is Ed. Welcome to the Outer Light channel. Well, before I go on, of course, I want to thank my patrons for your continued support of my channel. That means a great deal. And I'll definitely be going and answering those questions and comments that everyone put on the last video on my Patreon account. So thank you very much for that. Well, back here again. And just on Stephen Colbert again. And his interview with Oliver Stone, And Oliver Stone, if you don't know, spent 2 years interviewing Vladimir Putin, coming out with the Putin interviews, which of course Julian Assange actually tweeted, of course, on his Twitter account. So it's just very interesting, the reception of this in regards to the mainstream media, and how they have really just continually, now they're trying to pretty much target Oliver Stone for just the fact that he interviewed Vladimir Putin and he didn't do a massive hit piece on Vladimir Putin. If you really wanted someone to do a great documentary, for instance, you need someone with integrity like Oliver Stone, who just literally says it like it is, goes out and does his research. So here you have Stephen Colbert in essence, and the whole entire interview was very uncomfortable with Stephen Colbert, and it just seemed like there were these parts where the audience themselves were cackling, laughing at anything really that Stephen Colbert put forward. Of course, they were trained to do so. If you look at the setting, etc. But I just want to point this out. Throughout this interview, there's multiple times when Oliver Stone is saying something serious, and then the audience will keep on laughing. And you see this one time up here where he starts to have enough of it. And you can just tell there's not really any intellectual debate on the issue. Stephen Colbert is just of the opinion that Vladimir Putin is evil, and he's not even interested in seeing really the interview, looking at it for another side. He's pretty much a cutout for Hillary Clinton, still running along the railway tracks, so to speak, on his narrative, and he will never stop. Look at the dislike ratio here. And this is on Stephen Colbert's own YouTube account here for The Late Show. Look at the massive dislike ratio. I'll put a link to this in the comment section so you can go see this and take a look at it yourself. Of course, decide for yourselves. It's very disturbing. It's disturbing not for the reason it's just another hit piece. It's another attempt to undermine anybody that has any other perspective, such as Oliver Stone putting out and interviewing Vladimir Putin, giving Putin at least a perception, a portrayal, for instance, of what he could be like. It seems for the most part that Vladimir Putin seems to be, was okay with the interview, etc. So it doesn't seem to be a cut-up or a hit job on Putin at all, or twisting the narrative, as we've seen with the WikiLeaks documentary called Risk, which has largely been discredited now by WikiLeaks itself. It's really just a cut-out operation to make WikiLeaks look bad. But here, in essence, we have something more ominous, and I'm going to explain why. It is really, in slow motion, I'm just going to put this out there, in slow motion, this is the death of critical thought. This is just really the death of critical thought in a slow car crash motion, and these clips and everything are going to be used as historical examples of this happening. For those that want to look back, you'll be able to chart its course and see the slow decline and death of critical thought. I'm going to show you why just after this clip here. I'll just play this thing so you get a feel of it. Then I'm going to jump back to another Stephen Colbert interview, and I'm going to show you why it's the death of critical thought, literally, and just point out that and overall nature of this kind of thought and portrayed within recent, in fact, science fiction movies. It's really an ideology of sickness that accelerates out of these elite systems. But let's have a look at what Oliver Stone said.
I've always been for free speech.
Yes. Then he doesn't seem like he would be a hero of that.
Listen, no question, he's a social conservative in that way, but he believes that, I don't know why you're laughing, but he believes...
Because it seems like a mild description of his view. That's why...
See, there you can see the kind of relationship. Stephen Colbert just keeps on trying to get him to say that Putin's evil, Russia's evil, let's go for World War III, let's roll. Well, you've got to ask yourself, will Stephen Colbert be out there with a rifle fighting an irradiated planet? No, he will not be. But he's ready to campaign for it, which is very... it's very dangerous. It's also ominous, but it goes wider than this. You can see here you have a very intellectually, gifted individual, Oliver Stone. No matter, you don't have to agree with him on anything, but there's one thing about Oliver Stone. At least he's thinking for himself critically. He'll go out there and examine the information, come to a decision, and he's not a complete marionette of something else, like just Stephen Colbert here. Of course, let's go have a look at another clip, because you can see the narrative there. We'll play that one more time so you can just see it here in its totality. This really sums up the entire piece of trying to really discredit Oliver Stone, trying to get him to say he doesn't like Putin, to say that Putin's a monster, etc. Look, Vladimir Putin isn't perfect, but he's going over there and trying to capture something in a portrait, a video portrait over 2 years. He's been doing this over 2 years. So, of course, he knows Vladimir Putin as a leader of a country, a nuclear nation. He's got a huge arsenal of nuclear weapons. And Colbert's just continually trying to make a divide. Divide between the United States, divide between Russia. And who does that but someone that works for the arms dealers? Who stands to gain? Who pays Stephen Colbert's paycheck? Well, let's have another listen.
Well, I've always been for free speech.
Yes. Then he doesn't seem like he would be a hero of that.
Listen, no question, he's a social conservative in that way, but he believes that, I don't know why you're laughing, but he believes...
Because it seems like a mild description of his view. That's why they're laughing. Seems like a...
See, and you can see his face there. He's starting to just become tired of the hyenas. Let's go have a look at Stephen Colbert's portrayal of, in fact, Pizzagate. So here we've seen the same thing with Pizzagate, and this is why I'm going to explain. And you can see again there the classic dislike ratio down there. Shows you what people really think of it. And this is on his own channel, so you would expect he would have some resistance from his own audience against that, but still a massive dislike ratio as a matter of fact. Now here's the dislike, here's the actual narrative regarding Pizzagate. Now, I myself believe that these things are real, child trafficking and things are real, and believe me, it's much larger than some pizza shop. It's human trafficking, which is $1 billion industry. So let's have a look here at this breakdown and why I'll explain to you why this is the death of critical thought. And it doesn't even have to do with Pizzagate.
Michael Flynn, who tweeted out a link writing, "New Hillary emails, money laundering, sex crimes with children, etc. must read," introducing it, "You decide." Okay, then I decide a guy who spreads this bull shouldn't be in charge of national security.
So you can see the howling of the crowd there. Now ask yourself this. General Flynn is a 4-star general who spent his life disseminating intelligence and assessing intelligence in hugely stressful environments where that intelligence, if it's wrong, can get people killed. He is, no matter if you like General Flynn or don't like General Flynn, This person here is a grandmaster of assessing intelligence. That's what he does for a living. That is what a 4-star general is. So here's Stephen Colbert asking you who to decide the audience. From those statements that General Flynn made, either you can believe Stephen Colbert, seated here, who's a comedian. That's pretty much all he is a comedian that reads off scripts. And there's nothing wrong with being a comedian, but that's what he is. He's a comedian that runs like this talk show. It's just got jokes and humor in it. Or a person that's a 4-star general, is in charge of literally the national security of the United States of America. That's who he would ask you. Who knows more about intelligence than critically? Someone that's an expert in that area, or someone that's a comedian on TV. And you can tell by the crowd's reaction, they are literally going with the comedian from TV. And that really shows the death of critical thinking. No matter if you like General Flynn or do not like General Flynn, you have to understand, at least he's an expert in that field. Let's listen to it one more time.
Michael Flynn, who tweeted out a link writing, "New Hillary emails, money laundering, sex crimes with children, etc. must read," introducing it, "You decide." Okay? Then I decide a guy who spreads this bull shouldn't be in charge of national security.
So there you have to ask yourself, how does Stephen Colbert know that these statements are not true? How does he know that? This person has access to a lot of intelligence and a lot of people associated with the intelligence circuit. So why is Stephen Colbert just makes these judgments that are not true? You have to ask yourself, what's the root system of his decision about why it's not true? Well, it's his real world experience, which is inside a TV studio, writing jokes and things like that. That's his real world experience and making the assessment that they're not true. Whereas this individual lives and breathes in that field. So you have this very strange thing, and it's very hard, I guess, to see if you're just watching it, because you just absorb it like a sponge. But if you sit back and just wait for a moment and ask yourself, what is the reaction from the audience? They're howling and cackling in agreement. Tell you really what's happening. Well, it's the howling and crackling because they're just agreeing with Stephen Colbert. It's really the death of critical thinking. For instance, someone should say, well, hold on a second, why don't we let the man speak? Defend his argument. There's none of that. It just comes down to either side A or side B. And what's most important about this is that side A or B doesn't literally have to have any background or be an expert in that arena in order for you to just say what they're saying isn't true. Now, anyone has the right to say something's not true. Of course they do. But this is just a complete dismissal of this person's assessment. And we see the same thing exactly with the Oliver Stone interview. Oliver Stone's gone over there, interviewed Vladimir Putin for 2 years. Literally probably hundreds, if not thousands of hours of tape. Remember, if you sit down for, half an hour, you've got lots of B-roll and tape all around that. So it could be like hundreds of hours of tape. I don't know. You got B-roll of driving up to interview Putin, the streets, the camera, thinking about Putin, research and all this kinds of stuff. Probably literally thousands of hours involved in all this. And Stephen Colbert, all he wants to do in the interview is get Oliver Stone to say he dislikes Putin. But Oliver Stone will not do that. So it's very interesting. And I think it really shows a dangerous really level we're in now because of this reason. Yes, this has always existed. These individuals have always existed that would laugh and go along and don't really think critically. But now it's reached the stage where the people that are heralded, put on these platforms, all project this exact same narrative. they're all supported by audiences that don't think critically. They look at it and they just agree with the individuals. Let's play it one more time.
Well, you know, I've always been for free speech.
Yes, then he doesn't seem like he would be a hero of that.
He's a... Listen, no question.
See,
He's a social conservative in that way, but he believes that... I don't know why you're laughing, but it's... he believes...
This seems like a mild description of his view. That's why they're laughing.
So you can even tell by his body language, it's just very uncomfortable throughout the entire interview. He doesn't look at Stephen Colbert in the eyes. Also, there's various reports actually. Right here, as a matter of fact, I cannot confirm these, of course, because I've got no video to go on. But people are saying, this is over at libertyfighters.uk over here. And this just stating that Oliver Stone is actually half Jewish, okay? So he's got that heritage. You know, I don't have a problem with anyone or anything like that. But he went on to state, according to this article, because they removed this from the actual show when they put it out there, they removed it because Oliver Stone early on in the interview got into a little bit of an argument with Stephen Colbert here about the fact that he was saying Russia was involved in disrupting the election to Oliver Stone. He was said, yes, Israel also meddled in the elections, etc., and all of these kinds of things, which is probably true. Every country meddles in everyone's elections. The point is that they never want you to ever, change the narrative. It always has to be Russia was the person that done it. Why? Because Russia doesn't have a lot of huge, vast business interests within the United States. And it's the exact same thing if you use the word Saudi Arabia. If you use the word Saudi Arabia in the same argument, it would be the exact same thing. It would likely be cut from the TV just due to the huge financial interests with Saudi Arabia and the United States, and there you have it in a nutshell. So you don't need to take armies to another country to invade it and take it over. You just need to take money. And if you take buckets loads of money, you can buy off everybody. You can buy off your Stephen Colberts, etc., who enable the election of politicians. If they don't like a politician, they'll attack them ruthlessly. If they like a politician, then of course they'll promote them. So you only need to buy off certain assets and then you slowly consolidate power. But that's not really what this is about. This is really about the death of critical thinking, the death of asking, if Stephen Colbert says, for instance, but he's not, Putin's had people killed, etc. You just stand there and say, yes, well, what were your thoughts? Why do you say that? Who told you that, etc.? What's your source for that? Of course, you can't do it on that platform. I think under the circumstances, I think Oliver Stone gave a very good interview. There's no use getting into these kind of dramatics with Stephen Colbert, who's an expert in just creating drama in front of an audience that will really howl and cackle to anything. But don't believe the mainstream media, because these are the real numbers. This is how people feel. It's not like overwhelming the mainstream media has control over consciousness. It's very vastly dwindling. People can see the fakeness of all this. They can see it's all a scam. They can see the Russia collusion is ridiculous. That the FBI didn't even investigate the actual server, which is the seed mechanism for the DNC server, the seed mechanism for the entire Russian narrative. They relied on another party to do that, a party that's associated with the DNC itself, and an anti-Russia narrative. Anyway, I just thought I'd point that out again in the General Flynn remarks. Who do you believe? This comedian here, and there's nothing wrong with being a comedian, of course, or do you believe an expert in intelligence? Well, even if you don't like General Flynn, you don't like Stephen Colbert, you can scroll back and see why there's a problem with critical thought there. We'll just play this one more time here.
National Security Advisor Michael Flynn who tweeted out a link writing, "New Hillary emails, money laundering, sex crimes with children, etc. must read," introducing it, "You decide." Okay, then I decide a guy who spreads this bull shouldn't be in charge of national security.
See, there you have it, and it's the howl, the cackle, because it's just as comment, it's just all ad hominem attacks, really. It's just attacking people's character. You know, they used to mean something. You never attack someone's character, you attack the information. But now that doesn't matter anymore. Once you lose critical thinking and a mass, you really move into a dangerous world. You move into this world. Now, this is a picture from the Hunger Games. It's really where it's all about society, conformity, fashion trends. It's all about, you know, certain fashion, etc., and things like that. And I'm not just talking about clothes, but words used, phrases, ideologies can be fashion as well. Remember, it can be fashionable to believe a certain thing, or whatever, and that kind of as an iconography of those societal groups. They can be micro, and then they can be the majority, or they can be as large as you can imagine. The point is that these ideologies become fashionable. They become belief systems, just like fashion, clothing, watches, or how you have your hair cut. And that's a very shallow way in order to construct a society around really cross-pollinations of very shallow ideologies. You really need concrete ideologies, things that have tested and work to keep a society stable. That's why critical thinking models, you know, concrete structures in order to communicate through, you know, strong moral fabrics, you know, right and wrong. And I'm not talking about your sexuality or anything like that. That doesn't matter. It's a set of behavior. It really is, you know, a set of behavior. If I go next door, I know how to behave to get a cup of sugar. You know, I know that I don't go next door, and if they don't give me the cup of sugar, I don't know. I get all of their gnomes and I put them under the lawnmower. You know, it's a concrete structure of moral control that enables you to navigate life without expending vast amounts of resources, not understanding the right way to behave. And that's what you really have out of this also, is moral relativism. It's just destroying the model. So no one really knows what's right and wrong anymore. It's all about ultra-hedonistic behaviors, fashion, very shallow ideologies, and it really turns to the actual players like these individuals right here. Stephen Colbert, all about fashionable ideologies. See, someone that thinks critically, it isn't about a fashionable ideology. It's about looking at the information and deciding and assessing it and trying to figure out what it means. Not just going with a fashionable narrative, which of course is fashionable now to say that Russia hacked the election, Russia's trying to destroy the United States, etc., etc. You know, President Trump is bad, etc., etc. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that. I'll have one more video coming today. This one's pretty long. It's gone on to 21 minutes. I apologize for that one. But in the meantime, go out and decide for yourselves. Of course, you might have a completely different opinion, and that's fine with me. You just go out and take a look. Maybe you like Stephen Colbert and you're watching it and just really cheering for him. Whatever the case, just at least go out and take a look at it and think about it. Think about critical thinking and ask yourself the big question, I think, does Stephen Colbert asking his audience to believe him just on an ideological, you know, just because he's the authority figure within the studio, which brings up certain kinds of, you know, mechanisms innate to group dynamics where they obey authority figures, as you've seen in numerous examples throughout history. You know, cue the laugh track, laugh now because I say so, etc. Do you believe that that's an important way to be, or the Oliver Stone perception that you should really assess the information and judge for yourself? In the meantime, though, this is Ed from The Outer Light. Stay safe, and I'll see you all later.